question. Why do progressives have such trouble telling the difference between this and this? Hey everyone, I'm Rich Lowry of National Review, and pretty much since the end of World War II, the left has been accusing its opponents of being Nazis. They just can't quit this accusation and smear. Doesn't matter how senseless it is. Doesn't matter how tiresome it is. Doesn't matter how many times it's been rebutted. Doesn't matter what danger it might put people in who are being accused of being the worst sort of totalitarians. They think this is an acute point. They think it's telling. They think it's even funny. Here is Stephen Colbert.
Bovino went on complaining.
Look, Dana, they're trying to portray Border Patrol agents and ICE agents as Gestapo, Nazi, and many other words.
Yes, do not compare ICE or Border Patrol agents to the Nazis. That's an unfair comparison. The Nazis were willing to show their faces.
Oh, you get it? You shouldn't compare ICE agents to Nazis because they're worse than Nazis. They wear masks, but why are they wearing masks? It's because they're worried about themselves and their family being personally threatened by people doxing him. So this is a classic instance of a dog chasing its own tail. You have the anti-ICE agitation creating the need for the mask. Then when they wear the mask, you say, oh, it's terrible they're wearing the mask, and it justifies more agitation and supposedly proves they're like or even worse than Nazis. So once again, said it before, I guess it's necessary to keep saying it. Nazism was one of the most lunatic and poisonous ideologies known to man. It believed in an existential struggle between the species. It believed that the superior supposedly race had to annihilate the supposedly inferior race. It believed the state was supreme and it should be run by an Aryan vanguard. And there was a Jewish virus loose in the world that had created liberalism and capitalism and communism and on and on and on. And we're supposed to believe that if the federal government of the United States of America, in accord with laws duly passed by a democratically elected Congress and signed into law over the years, over the decades by democratically elected presidents, if that government wants to enforce those laws and detain illegal immigrants, it's the equivalent to Nazis. It is so laughable and preposterous. Look, Trump has some bad tendencies, right? I think even some of the strongest supporters will admit that. But what's happened with his stuff? You know, he wants to fire a member of the Federal Reserve Board. He's probably going to get blocked by the courts. He's tried to prosecute in a vindictive manner Letitia James and James Comey. Where's that gone? Nowhere. Blocked by the courts. He's talked for a while loosely about taking Greenland, but whether he ever meant it or not, I don't think he did. He backed down when there was a lot of pushback. This is a guy who is democratically elected and keenly aware of democratic pressures and public opinion. What's happened in Minneapolis? Well, he had an approach that was driven by Kristi Noem and Bovino and the rest of them. And Trump said, you know what? I see now this is not popular. This might be undermining my agenda with the public. This might not play well in the midterm elections that are going to happen and be a Democratic, small d, Democratic event. I'm going to change course and send Tom Homan there. What about any of that is Nazi-like? None of it. But again, they just can't help themselves. The New York Times had an op-ed along these lines just the other day after the latest tragic shooting in Minneapolis. This is an opinion piece by a writer named Masha Gessen. Gessen writes, after the past 3 weeks of brutality in Minneapolis, it should no longer be possible to say that the Trump administration seeks merely to govern this nation. It seeks to reduce us all to a state of constant fear, a fear of violence from which some people may at a given moment be spared, but from which no one will ever be truly safe. This is our new national reality. State terror has arrived. Gessen goes on, of course, to make a Nazi comparison. Terror was carried out by the secret police and the paramilitary forces, especially the SA, whose job it was to instill fear in the population. 1934, Hitler had an estimated 150 to 200 members of the SA's own leadership arrested and its top generals executed in a demonstration that no one was safe. Stalin regularly carried out similar purges. The toolbox isn't particularly varied, Gessen concludes. President Trump is using all the instruments, the reported quotas for ICE arrests, the paramilitary force made up of thugs drunk on their own brutality, the spectacle of random violence, particularly in city streets, the post-mortem vilification of the victims. It's only natural that our brains struggle to find logic in what we are seeing. There is a logic, and this logic has a name. It's called state terror. It's so completely laughable. He's using all the instruments of state terror. When has he sent his secret police force after his internal party critics to murder them or to send them to torture chambers? Right? A lot of the people who don't like Trump and oppose him within the party, they're out of politics right now, but they're living really good lives. I assume Mitt Romney is doing just fine right now. When has he sent the black cars to knock on doors at midnight and pick up writers and dissidents to disappear them or send them to the gulag, right? None of this is happening. What Gessen is complaining about is immigration enforcement. Now, it's true, these guys are wearing camo oftentimes in Minneapolis. They're wearing vests, but this doesn't make them Nazis. All police forces, they wear boots, they carry weapons, they wear military-style vests when they're on potentially dangerous operations. All militaries in the world have boots, wear vests, have uniforms, carry weapons, just the way the Nazis did. That doesn't make them Nazis. Now, there was a slightly more subtle and sophisticated version of this case also in the New York Times. So this is a discussion among various New York Times writers, and the moderator brings up the concept of the dual state, a way of analyzing what happened in Nazi Germany. And one of the writers says, yes, we're living in a version of the dual state, not to the same extent as the Nazis, of course, but Frankel's, that's the labor lawyer who came up with this idea of the dual state framing, is still relevant. The Nazis didn't create their totalitarian state immediately. Instead, they were able to lull much of the population to sleep just by keeping their lives relatively normal. As you say, they went to work, paid their taxes, entered into contracts, did all the things you normally do in a functioning nation. But if you cross the government, then you passed into a different state entirely, where you would feel the full weight of fascist power, regardless of the rule of law. So let's accept, for the sake of argument, this idea of a dual state. What do people do to get on the wrong side of the supposed dual state? Well, they've come here illegally in violation of our laws, and our laws say that they should be detained until their immigration proceedings reach a conclusion, right? That's what they've done to get on the wrong side of the dual state. So what we're talking about again here is just immigration enforcement. And you can argue, this is a matter of opinion, that their tactics have been too aggressive in Minneapolis. They, of course, are occasionally going to make mistakes. They might arrest someone who's not an illegal immigrant and then have to release them, or they might detain someone who is here illegally, but people are very sympathetic and attached to in their community. That's all fine. It's not Nazism. Now, we've had these two tragic shootings in Minneapolis. There, even if you have the worst interpretation of these shootings, they weren't just poor exercises of judgment in real time. They were actually illegal. They were still instigated by agitators on the streets. The police, the agents didn't go out and seek either of these people to shoot and kill them. No, they're making split-second decisions that were instigated by the agitators' conduct and behavior. So what does this Nazi argument that the left is so attached to do? Well, it does at least two things. Both involve radicalization. One, they radicalize people on the street. They give them a permission slip to take extreme measures to resist ICE. We don't know, maybe we'll never find out what actually Alex Preddy thought about ICE in his own words, but what he did, challenging, in the first incident we now know about, challenging ICE agents to come after him, spitting at their vehicle, kicking the taillight out of their vehicle, which very well may have been a federal felony. All of that is motivated by extreme hatred of ICE and perhaps the belief that they are a Gestapo-like force. And what did the Gestapo do in that instance? Well, they got out of the car after he kicked it and damaged it, and they pushed him down, and then they went and left. They didn't even arrest him. The supposed Gestapo didn't even arrest the guy. And if they had, history might have played out differently and he might still be alive today. Then there's the other level of radicalization, which is people in power taking this Nazi rhetoric seriously, like the abysmal DA in Philadelphia, Larry Krasner.
This is a small bunch of wannabe Nazis. That's what they are. In a country of 350 million, we outnumber them. If we have to hunt you down the way they hunted down Nazis for decades, we will find your identities. We will find you. We will achieve justice.
So I guess we're going to have the equivalent of Nazi hunting, and these ICE agents are going to have to flee to places like Argentina, and we'll have to undertake covert operations to find them and snatch them and bring them back to the United States in justice, and have the equivalent of Eichmann trials years from now. Do they even listen to themselves talk? You know, the byword in Minneapolis now is de-escalation. If we're really going to have de-escalation, this stuff has to stop too. Stop accusing officers of American law enforcement of being the moral equivalent of stormtroopers for a hideously murderous and evil regime. Have a little self-respect and decency. Hey, by the way, if you appreciated this video, please like it or leave a comment or even subscribe. I promise you, you won't regret it. I'm Rich Lowry, over and out.